Hi everyone, welcome to this lesson on The Duke by Tommy Emmanuel. First, the top tier patrons. As always, only the first part of this lesson will be released on YouTube. For full access, please head over to my brand new website for the best experience or to my Patreon page. The difference between the two is explained in a video on each landing page. You can find all the links down below, as well as the link to music notes for the tab and notation file. Tommy Emmanuel wrote The Duke pretending it to be a piece of a movie score, more specific, an old John Wayne Western movie. And you can really imagine that melody being played by a big orchestra when the credits roll. Tommy uses a lot of different techniques to create this soundscape, ranging from tremolo picking in the intro to a loose and free time feel in the verse and chorus. But this shouldn't scare you away, because this song is among the more doable songs by Tommy. The total length of the tutorial can make you think the song is more complicated than it really is. This first part is quite long because I will be explaining tremolo picking in detail for people like me who have never used it before. And in the second part I will explain 90% of the chorus in under 10 minutes, which is the closest thing to a speedrun you will ever see me do. Only after that I will spend 10 more minutes looking at several alternatives for what I believe to be the two most challenging chords in any Tommy Emmanuel song I've done so far. Those alternatives should make it playable for most guitar players, so you have no excuse not to at least try the tune. Have fun. Okay, on to the tune then. The guitar is in drop D tuning, or at least my guitar is in drop D tuning. Tommy often likes to play this song with a drop D tuning and then the whole guitar dropped down one full step. So basically having a low C on the low E string and then everything else on top of that in standard tuning down one step. Now I thought that this would probably complicate things for most of you, so I just went for standard tuning guitar with a drop D on the low E string. So that is all you need to know in terms of the tuning. Then you need a thumb pick. I guess it's possible to play the tune without one as well. There are no special techniques here. I'm just sticking to what Tommy is doing. That is all you need to know. Then we can dive straight into that famous intro. First, let's have a listen at what it sounds like. The full intro already well below concert speed, and the reason for that is that double finger tremolo technique is something completely new for me as well. So let's see if I can guide you through this section, although it being something relatively new for me. We start with basically two chord shapes, always the same thing. We start on the 9th fret D string with the index finger, then ring finger 11th fret on the G string, we leave an open B string, and throughout the whole intro that B string is going to remain open, and then the middle finger 10th fret on the high E string. So 9th fret, 11th fret, open B string, 10th fret. This is the first chord shape. Then as we move down to the second chord, the index finger and the ring finger are basically going to stick to the same strings all the way down. It's always going to be the same position, always one fret in between those two fingers on the D string and on the G string. And then on top we either have like this, the middle finger like in the first chord, and in the second chord as we move down we have 7th fret, 9th fret, open B string, and then the pinky on the 9th fret on the high E string. Those are the only two chord shapes for the whole intro. Index finger, ring finger, middle finger, or index finger, ring finger, pinky. That is always the exact same thing. The picking pattern in the thumb is, I think, meant to be very consistent. Now, if you see Tommy play this intro, the thumb pick sometimes does something slightly different, but I do think this is what it is based on. You always pick D string, G string, B string, D string, G string, B string, D string, B string. So when Tommy plays a few variations on this, intentional or not, I can't really tell, but this is the basic picking pattern. As you can tell, I'm picking really lightly with a thumb pick, otherwise you won't have any chance in the world to get a correct balance with those tremolo notes on top of that. There is a slight bit of timing displacement going on. If I count along with those thumb-picked notes, this is what you get. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So that is the picking pattern. If I subdivide the beat a little bit more, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That is the picking pattern. After each and every note, we play 2 extra notes on the high E string using the middle finger and the index finger. You have to pick these notes really lightly. They have to be as even as possible, both in volume and in timing. The most common mistake when playing those, or let's say the most common technical hiccup that occurs, is actually exactly that, a hiccup. That is trying to connect those two top strings back to back with each other, and picking the second note sort of mutes the first note a little bit too early. Picking really lightly and starting slow will remedy this, or at least prevent you from running into a lot of problems. Really slowly. This is what you get in the first bar. 1, and the picking pattern is always middle finger, index finger. So thumb, middle, index, thumb, middle, index, thumb, middle, index. Always the same thing, and in terms of timing, as even as possible. 1 and 2. So that was just the first beat each time. Thumb pick 2 picked notes with the middle finger and index finger. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. On the fourth beat, Tommy often plays a fill, moving the melody note up just 1 note. So what we're going to do after the bass note on the fourth beat, we're going to drop down the pinky on the 12th fret, pick that 2 times, which is something that we can do if we slow it down. 4. And then the open B string, and by the time you transfer to the picked notes, the pinky has moved down all the way to the 9th fret into the next chord. So 4 and then you can drop down the next chord basically and start the next bar. So that open B string is always going to sort of mask our transition into the next chord. Now if we play this slowly, we can really separate those 2 notes. So 4 and 1. See, so we can really play 2 times that 12th fret, 2 times that 9th fret if we do it slow. Once you pick up the speed, that 12th fret is always going to sound like a slide going down to the next chord. It just connects a little bit too quickly. If you watch any of Tommy Emmanuel's original footage, you will always see that there is some, let's say, some form of slide on that 4th beat, and there are some notes that have to be dropped in order to switch to the next chord. So just make sure that you realize in a slower pace, it will sound slightly different than when you play it up to speed. That full first bar, and basically you can now play the whole intro. The picking pattern is the exact same thing over and over and over again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Dropping to the next chord. Now in this chord, the exact same thing. New chord shape with the pinky on top, 9th fret. Picking pattern, exactly the same thing. 1, pinky moves up to the 10th fret, 4, moving the pinky to the 5th fret, and then the exact same chord shape, just 2 frets down. So first chord, second chord, third chord, just moving the chord shape 2 frets down. Those first 2 chords back to back. Only change here is we're grabbing the same chord shape, again the exact same picking pattern, but now we're playing a different fill. Instead of moving up the pinky, we're going to move down to the middle finger, 5th fret. So you start with the pinky on the 7th fret, high E string, and then after one arpeggio pattern, 1, 2, 3, as you head back to the D string bass note, you're going to remove the pinky and drop down the middle finger on the 5th fret. 1, 2, 3, 4. You just complete the arpeggio pattern. You keep the middle finger where it's at and you shift down both the index finger and the ring finger 1 fret from 5th fret, 7th fret down to the 4th fret and the 6th fret. Moving you into the 4th chord, picking pattern, exactly same thing. Just moving through the chord shape, 4th beat, adding the pinky again on the 7th fret this time. 1, 2, 3, 4, dropping down the pinky on the 7th fret, open B string, dropping down the pinky to the 5th fret, and again, same chord shape as before, index finger, ring finger, 3rd fret, 5th fret, and the pinky on the 5th fret, high E string. So, always the same 2 chord shapes. B minor, A major, G major, F sharp minor, and now to F major. Let me put that first section together, all those bars back to back, moving down the neck. Then the exact same thing on the 3rd fret as you did on the 5th fret. Now, one thing that I forgot to mention, this chord shape, reaching down with the middle finger, might be a bit too much for some people, and it's even worse when you have to do that on the 3rd fret. The stretch becomes even bigger. So if this chord switch is tricky, then you can also go for this one to start out with, and then switch over the pinky to the G string. So either you get this, or switching over the pinky, so that you end up with this chord shape. It's just a little bit easier on the left hand, and if this bothers you, then you're definitely going to want to do this on the 3rd fret as well. For the rest, it's the exact same thing again, starting on the pinky, and after one arpeggio up the bass strings, you drop down the middle finger on the 3rd fret. And again, you keep the middle finger where it's at and you shift down the index finger and ring finger down 1 fret from the 3rd fret, 5th fret to 2nd fret, 4th fret. That last chord is just holding down the chord, no extra movements, no changes within the chord, just arpeggiating with the same picking pattern, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then we shift up, 5th fret, open A string, and now we're no longer going to play that tremolo note on the same string, but we're going to arpeggiate always with the middle finger on the high E string and the index finger on the B string. And Tommy arpeggiates different bass notes in this chord, so you have an open A string bar at the 5th fret, across the D string all the way up to the high E string, and then he adds the ring finger on the 7th fret on the G string, giving you roughly an A dominant sus4 chord. The arpeggio goes something like this. So open A string, E string, B string, then thumb pick to the D string, E string, B string, thumb pick to the G string, E string, D string. So we keep playing the same picking pattern, thumb, middle finger, index finger, but middle finger and index finger are now on separate strings. So 1, 2, sticking to the same arpeggio on top, then moving up the index finger to the 6th fret on the D string. You drop the bar altogether, you keep the ring finger on the 7th fret, and you drop the middle finger on the 6th fret on the B string, and the pinky 7th fret on the high E string, giving you an E dominant flat 9 chord or a G sharp diminished chord. You can look at this chord shape both ways. So one more time, the F chord, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's the same trick. One bass note on the D string, E string, B string, and then we stick with the thumb pick on the G string. And then all the way at the end we shift up the top 3 fingers up to the 9th fret. So this shape stays in the exact same form as down here, and the index finger only goes up 1 fret. So the chord shape on top goes up 2 frets, the index finger only goes up 1 fret to an A dominant chord. Now, depending on which version you watch, this section unfolds a little bit different each and every time. So in some versions, Tommy just plays that arpeggio once, going D string, E string, B string, G string, and then a harmonic lifting up the index finger and just touching the harmonic on the 7th fret and back to the high E string. So and there are versions where he repeats that top arpeggio, slows down and ends with the same thing, that harmonic and that top E string 9th fret. So that's something that you can pick and choose how you want to end up all the way at that A chord, all the way at the end of the intro. But then we are basically ready to move into the chorus. Let's play that last section, let's say starting on the F chord, roughly the last 4 bars. Sometimes even an open A bass string after that. So that was the full intro. Now, if you practice this, take it slow. That tremolo on top can be quite unnerving. So I can tell just by doing this tutorial by itself, listening to that repeating part over and over again can get on your nerves, and not only on your nerves, but on everybody else's nerves as well. So make sure if you practice this, lock yourself away. Not everybody is going to enjoy your practice sessions on this section of the tune. Now, before we dive into the chorus, first let me play through the entire intro one more time. But as you can see, it is one of those Tommy Emmanuel parts that is brilliant in its simplicity and yet quite tricky to get the technique down to execute it very well. But one more time, the full intro. Here we go. and straight into the verse. Now, before we dive into the verse, let me play the exact same thing, a bit more up to speed with the magnet slapped on the guitar, just so you can look at how that picking hand works exactly the same way throughout the whole intro. So I hope that helped. Now we're ready to dive into the verse, and the verse is something for part 2 of the tutorial. I'll see you there.